then we'll get going. Okay. And we're live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another week. I'm Shane, and I am the host of Let's Get Real here at 520 East Brands, and I'm super excited to welcome you today to our show. Today, we are very, very excited. First of all, my very long driveway that's been covered in ice is now uncovered, and I can get out of here, and my kids are back on campus, so life is good. But beyond that, I'm really, really excited to welcome our guests today. So I'm going to introduce you to my guest, Danielle Hughes. Danielle and I actually met years and years ago. I was co-owner of an online gift boutique, and she owned this cute series of baby onesies called Baby Fish Mouth. So if you've ever seen When Harry Met Sally, you know what that's about. And there were multiple ones. There were all different ones with cute little movie quotes that were adapted for babies. So there was one that said, he gave me a bottle I couldn't refuse. So you get the gist. Very, very cute. So I'm often asked about I lost my train of thought there. I'm often asked about how I got to where I am today. And really, it's funny, Danielle didn't know this until I wrote a blog post the other day, but she was actually a big piece of who I am and how I got there. So I started with this boutique. And then when the boutique closed, Danielle actually told me that she loved how I had written about her product and I should consider becoming a sales rep. Having no idea what that even meant, I kind of took a quick course. What does that mean? And learned how to be a sales rep. And over time, one of my customers that I would call upon with cute little gift items, he asked me to help him on his Facebook page, and really the rest is history. That's how it started. So 12 years later, here I am. So let me tell you a little bit about Danielle. Danielle Hughes is the Chief Personality Officer of More Than Words Marketing, a copywriting and branding consultancy. She helps individuals and brands to develop their genuine personality brand, creating content that sounds like you and giving you the space to truly be yourself in the messaging. While she can't pull a rabbit out of her hat, she can hone your brand message, engage your audience, and deadlift you or your employees, but not at the same time. That's just irresponsible. Note, Danielle is available for office party tricks and accepts payment in bottles of Bordeaux. So I would love to introduce you now to my guest, Danielle. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you. So I love like the magic of like this screen moving over. This is like Hollywood. This is so fancy.
Well, it's a lot of brain power on a Monday morning for me to make it happen.
I mean, you're doing a good job. You're crushing it.
Thank you.
Crushing
it. Thank you. Learning my way. Every week I make some kind of mistake and then I get a little bit better, but that's how I learn, right?
That's okay. It's more important to be authentic than to be perfect.
Absolutely. And that's where you and I have the very same philosophies. So it's so good to see you. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad that we've kept in touch all of these years. And, you know, I've followed you on LinkedIn all these years, and you had the content writing business even before Baby Fish Mouth, but I knew you from Baby Fish Mouth. And, you know, at that point, I didn't have babies in onesies anymore. But if I had thought about having a third, it would have been your onesies that put me over. But I didn't.
Thank you.
Not going there.
Thank you. I know. I think about reviving the business now that you can do like print to ship and print on demand and all of that. But I would have to talk to my business partner and see if she's interested. I don't know. It's in the back of my brain. It's a potential noodling side hustle. We'll see.
It was such a fun business. But today we're going to talk about your full-time gig.
The real business. Correct.
Real business. So talk about More Than Words Marketing. What do you actually do in that role, and how did you get here?
So the hopefully not super long, semi-short answer is I started out in television marketing, and I was put in charge of crafting all of the material that sales would need to go out and sell programming. And so back in those days, it was like printed media kits. We did PowerPoint presentations. We came up with ideas of how to like put brands into shows in a way that was like organic. This was just the start of brand integration, which now we all just take for granted. It's just everywhere. And, as you move up the ladder, after a while, you get less creative role and more managerial. And as I got higher up, I started to kind of miss that creativity. So I ended up thinking that a bigger, higher role job with more money would make me happy. Of course, it made me miserable. And they, I took the job because they said they wanted someone to speak up and tell them everything that was wrong about what they were doing. But of course, when you tell people everything that's wrong about what you're doing, nobody really wants to hear it. So that didn't go so well. And then I ended up moving over to the agency side. After that, I was a freelance creative writer. And then a few years ago, I started my own business when I realized that I needed to take control of my own destiny, right? And instead of being an order taker, I needed to be someone who sought out my own clients and sought out my own work and kind of defined the type of business that I wanted to have. Okay. I was like, you look frozen to me. And I was like, are you here? Are you there? Okay. Hopefully it's just on my end and you're not actually frozen to the viewers. But anyway, so, oh my God, it's like not a long story short, just a long story, even longer. But the bottom line is I realized kind of retroactively that I never fit into corporate, that because I was always very genuine, very myself, I never was like one person at home and one person in the office. And that wasn't rewarded back then. They didn't want people who were individuals. They wanted clones and people that would toe the corporate line and just tell them what they wanted to hear and play the game. And I just could not do that. It just wasn't in my DNA. And I think that I've realized in the past few years, as I've struck out on my own more and more, that I was always so individualistic. And now we live in a culture where being individual is rewarded and celebrated. But back then it was denigrated. And so now I get to help people be more themselves and bring more of themselves into their message, because the more authentic you are, the stronger connections you create with your audience, and the easier it is for you to create messaging because it sounds like you, not like who you think you should be trying to sound like.
Right, absolutely. And you and I definitely overlap in our philosophy there. We get on Twitter and we create a persona and we put this human voice behind the keyboard. So it's not just a brand saying, buy my product, but it's more solving problems as a human, earning credibility, making friends, making real friends out there on social. So talk to me, we have a specific process about how we get into the head of our clients. How do you do it? How do you go about really honing that message and picking out the pieces of that client that need to come through in the messaging?
I mean, a lot of it is conversation first, right? First and foremost, talking to the client about, who is your audience, right? And getting really specific, right? Your audience is not just women or women 18 to 39 or whatever. It's, women who are stuck, who feel like they're not heard, who are suffering from X, Y, and Z, or, and maybe it doesn't even have to be a gender or whatever, but like thinking about your audience in the most specific way possible. And then understanding what their struggles are and what their pain points are. Like we have to start there first. Like the voice of the client doesn't even come yet because the client has to know, or the brand needs to know sort of who they are, what they stand for, what makes them different, and who they're talking to. And so that's like the brand positioning. So once we kind of build that out, if they don't already have it, or if it's not very distinct, then I get into, okay, what is your brand personality? Meaning like, what are the types of words that you think describe your brand? And if you think that they describe your brand, but they actually don't, where do we want to get to, right? Because a lot of times it's like, well, we are this, but we really want to be this.
Right.
And figuring that out first, right? If they think that they're inspiring and whatever, but their content is actually kind of middle of the road and milquetoast and boring, it's like in figuring out how do we infuse a little bit of that. And a lot of times it's also just like you said, they're not writing like a human. They're writing corporate-y, salesy, jargony nonsense, gobbledygook that no one's going to read and no one can understand. So when you break it down into the simplest, most layman's basic language, as if you're writing to a friend or your grandmother or your 5-year-old. All of a sudden, personality comes through because you have to be so much more clear in what you're saying.
Right, right, absolutely. And we, on our end, we deal more with short form writing, tweets, Instagram stories, hashtags. You, a
Yes.
lot of the times, are dealing with longer form messaging. So, do you think when you're doing that and you're dealing with overall branding, do you think there's such a thing as too much personality? And if so, how do you find that balance?
I don't think there's such a thing as too much if it's on brand, right? So some brands are going to be much more personality focused, like big and bold and audacious and vibrant, and that's great for them. But like other brands, it's just finding that balance of what is just enough for you, that it's going to still sound genuine and still sound authentic, but it's not going to sound inauthentic because you're almost leaning so far in the other way. Like, I think every client really has a comfort level. And when we start working together, they kind of recognize where they're willing to have fun and where they're like, that doesn't sound like me, or I don't feel comfortable with that. So I think if you're willing to go all in 100%, you should. But that's just not for everybody, right? It's based on your own. It's also based on your own. If you're a solopreneur, it's based on your own personality. If you're a brand, you probably have a mission, vision, some sort of corporate guidelines. Like, there's something that's already been created, and then it's just adapting that to sound human without changing the overall positioning or the overall mission or strategy.
Right, right. I feel like we are constantly educating our clients on shifting from that branded marketing message into that real human voice. I have a client, Lindsay, who works with me, is going to laugh. I have a client, we're always trying to pull out new, fresh content with his take on things. And we want to put it in things like Instagram stories, just to kind of tell a quick snippet. And his response was, I don't want to share with people what I'm eating for breakfast. And I said, we don't want you to share that. That's not on brand.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But how can we give some of your personality and sort of your take on it? So I think that's where that balance can come in. So speaking of clients, without naming any names, obviously, there's no HIPAA rules, but we're pretty close to that. Can you tell us a little bit about the toughest client you've had as far as trying to figure out how to make them sound human? Like, what kinds of industries have been really tough?
So I would say financial is really difficult, and not even just because it's a more like dry environment, but because there's so many rules around compliance and restrictions and what you can and can't say. And so it's almost like pharma, which I also don't do much of, just because there's just so many rules and regulations. And at the end of the day, by the time you even put anything in, you have to take it all out, because what you have to put for the disclaimer is 3 times as long as the actual message. So I would say, like, very heavily regulated industries are just challenging because it's harder to be friendly and colloquial, because a lot of that can be misinterpreted as making a promise or making a statement, or, things that could get you into trouble because you're sounding in a way that they're going to read as you're not allowed to really advertise if you're a financial professional, right? So it's a very fine line. So I would say that's the most difficult. And obviously, and also, I would say like serious subject matter, like things around, like nonprofits, if you're talking about disease or if you're talking about racial justice. And it can be done because you want to talk to people in a very friendly way, but it is a delicate dance of being accurate and taking it seriously, and yet still, what is that?
Sorry, apparently I didn't put my phone on.
Okay. I was like, where's that coming from? We're dancing. Yeah, so I would say, like, it's wanting to give gravity to the message, but it still can come across as if you're telling a friend, here's this thing I'm really passionate about and I believe in. So Yeah, I think anything though can have some level of personality. It
Right.
just might be very, very minor.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. So, for those who are trying to either start a business or sort of make that shift away from that branded corporate messaging to be more human, any tips or advice you have how they should start thinking about that to develop that voice?
So I think the first thing is that people believe that in order to seem like you know what you're talking about, you need to throw in every possible industry word, buzzword, and jargon term that relates
Mhm.
to your industry. And in my opinion, it's the opposite. In my opinion, that just shows that you actually don't know what you're talking about. You're just throwing in these words to make people think you do. So I always say the first step for anyone is to try to write out your positioning statement as if you were telling it to like your grandma. Can you explain in 3 to 4 sentences what your business does, how they help, and what makes you different to your grandmother and make it clear without using any jargon, just 100% easy, layman's terms, digestible words? It's a really good place to start because it forces you to remove anything that's like 10 letters or more, basically. So,
I
and
like
not that
that,
grandma's done.
explaining
No
it
one's
to
saying
a
grandma's
grandma.
done,
Right,
but
right,
I'm just
right. But
saying, yeah.
that's a good way to do it. Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. So that's the
Um,
first thing. The
okay.
second thing is contractions. Contractions are your friend. Nobody talks in full sentences. We would not say, I am going to the mall today. You say, I'm going to the mall and da da da. Like, right. So again, like removing barriers of slowing down the reader's eye and making it more like you would speak as opposed to how you would write is
Okay.
also just a quick way to kind of take some of the the quote unquote formality out of the message.
Got it. That's good. That's good advice. Yeah. So, as you are still growing your business from your apartment in New York, tell me what kinds of clients are you looking for right now? And if somebody out there is a good fit, I'm going to put your contact info up on the screen.
Thank you. So I always tell people that if they hear someone say, my copy doesn't sound like me, people come to my website or, and they don't know what I do, or I know I should be creating content, but it's so hard and I just don't know what to say. Those are my people. And it could be individuals, it could be small businesses, it could be bigger
Mhm.
brands. I definitely cross the spectrum of all types of engagements depending on the client. I have large nonprofits that I work for and larger agencies that I partner with. And then I work with small business owners and solopreneurs who are also just really trying to refine their message or get their message out. And, the level of engagement really just depends on need. Some people, it's working on the brand message and like figuring that out. Some people kind of have that and are like, just go do some blogs for me or help me create some social posts. Some it's website copy or emails. It really just depends on what they're looking for and what they need.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's great. Awesome. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
today. It was so
you.
good to see you. You have great advice and great tips, and I love following you on LinkedIn and reading what you're writing and just knowing what you're doing. And it's good to know that there are people out there like you that believe companies, no matter their size, no matter their brand, can still be human, can still relate person to person to person. And I agree with that, as you know, definitely part of the philosophy of my business. So I'm so glad that we have that in common. And it's so good to see you again.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. And this was so
Absolutely.
fun. And yeah, we should do it again maybe. We'll do like a follow up in
Absolutely.
six
We'll do
months
a
or
follow up.
something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
absolutely. All
That'd be
right.
awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining. And to everyone out there, thank you for joining. If you have any questions about your social, your messaging, you can reach out to Danielle. You can reach out to me. I'm happy to help you. You can tweet me at 520 East Brands. You can also find me on my website, 520eastbrands.com. I can't wait to see you next week. Speaking of 520 East Brands, next week I am taking the curtain away. You can picture Oz. I am bringing on my two coworkers from my team, well, two of my coworkers from my team, Lindsay and Candace, who are the community managers that do a lot of the behind the scenes work here for our team, and they deal with our clients on a day-to-day basis, and they've got a lot of funny stories and great tips, and I'm just so excited to welcome them to the show. It's going to be great. So we'll see you next Monday. Have a safe, happy, productive week. Work on your messaging. Make it sound real. There's just no reason not to be human. So we appreciate reading and engaging with that kind of content. And we'll see you out there. Have a great week.